Welcome. You're listening to episode 41 of Pause and Play, the Preventive Vet podcast. On today's show, we've got a bit of a different take on what to expect when you're expecting. It's more of a what to prep when you're expecting and you've got a dog at home, because there are even more considerations and precautions to take to ensure the entire family is safe, comfortable, and secure. Special guest certified dog trainer Jennifer Anderson is back with great tips for setting your growing family up for success. And now, let's start the show. This is some serious quarantine realness going on because I totally forgot that that I had that. Well,
yeah, I wasn't sure what it was. It's hard to tell if it's a birthmark or if it's a scratch or a bump.
Well, it's supposed to be the Harry Potter thing, but I smudged it because I totally forgot that I had it on there. And so now I look like Mikhail Gorbachev Potter.
See, I don't know anything about Harry Potter, so.
It was obviously the lightning bolt scar
before.
Okay. Yeah. In our work morning meeting, it made sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that it looked okay this morning at least. But you know what? This is the reality of the situation. So I'm just going with it. Also, I've been wearing these glasses all day. They don't even have lenses. There's no reason for me to but I just forgot because I am so used to wearing glasses nowadays that I just kept them on.
Are you wearing your contacts? And so
yes.
You can still see? I was like,
that's why I forgot. Because otherwise I wouldn't have
That's great.
Oh boy, not enough coffee in the world, I think. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Pause and Play, the Preventive Vet podcast. I am your host, Mia Potter, and this is what quarantine will do to you. Okay, I am here with Preventive Vets certified dog trainer Kathy Madsen. How are you doing?
I'm great, Mia. How are you?
I'm great. And there's Sookie. Hi,
yes,
Sookie.
She's looking out the window, but she'll probably make a better appearance later.
At some point. And then we've got a very special guest. Jennifer Anderson is back with us to talk all about things babies. How are you doing, Jennifer?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here virtually.
Yes. Maybe sometime soon we'll be able to do this in person, but it's great to be able to see your face, though.
Face to a name always helps us, for sure.
Yes. I mean, Zoom, I gotta say, did something right. This, without Zoom, I think I would have been lost for all of this quarantine time.
They definitely found their path. Yes.
Yeah. I think a lot of people it's such an uncertain time. And I mean, we hear that all the time in every single email that I get, every commercial that I see. It's a reminder that it's an uncertain time. But I think that, when you've got somebody that's an expert that can help with making things a little bit more certain in their steps to anything is great. And so for anybody that is expecting a baby, whether they're pregnant or adopting, right?
Correct. Absolutely. The baby's on the way. Yes.
We're doing this what to expect when you're expecting so that you can prepare yourself and your dogs for the arrival of a new little human.
That's right. Absolutely. Everybody deserves to be prepared. That's for sure.
Yeah. As much as you can be, right? I'm not a parent, obviously, to a human baby. I'm assuming that just like even with animals, you can't prepare for everything. No, there's always going to be surprises.
Exactly. And I think that slip-ups are inevitable, but how to manage those is key.
Yeah.
Really.
Definitely. And so coming in with some preparedness and being able to ask questions about your unique situations, that's where you come in. What would you consider to be the first step in preparing your dog for this big change?
Yeah, one of the steps is just getting them used to not having so much you time. Right? Whether you're bottle feeding your baby or breastfeeding your baby. those physical contact moments between, the expectant parent and the dog are not going to happen as frequently. So you can feel sad about that. You can feel guilty about that. But what if we could get our dogs adapted to that before the baby actually even arrives?
Right. So the baby doesn't turn into this, like, it arrived and now this was taken.
Right. It's like going to the dentist and getting a tooth looked at and boom, there's pain, right? You have that association. Now baby arrives and the dog is isolated, and then you have this guilt that you have now ostracized your dog. But if you could get your dog used to a few different safety zones, like we mentioned during the first podcast, or comfort spaces,
right?
This would really help them along the way. And so that's when I like to incorporate safety zone number 1, which is usually within the heart of the home. So most people have this open concept, right? You're sitting right now in what you would be your family room and possibly your kitchen behind you. And if there was a way to potentially put a dog bed in that region that is not in a corner. So I like for a dog to have 2 exits out of their dog bed, where they could be within that area, the safety zone number 1, heart of the home, but not maybe right next to you, right? Because you're holding baby. But maybe you start to feel tired yourself, right? And your baby begins to nap next to you. It's like, well, now what do we do? And that's where a gated system or an X-Pen comes into play within this safety zone region that I'm looking at, in your home, right? So it's like, okay, my baby's content, but I am feeling a little drowsy. So you're going to fall into passive supervision. And that would be the time where we would actually want a physical barrier in place. So getting our loved dog behind a baby gate so you can rest. And if by chance you doze off, your dog cannot reach your baby. Right. And so just getting them used to.
Yeah, that would be important.
Yeah, being in that heart of the home, but being physically separated. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, no, you want to go in there, right? You want to go behind this gate. There's all these little things for you that I've left for you that you've learned to love over time. You have a comfy bed, you have a water bowl, you have your favorite stuffed Kong toy that we'll talk about at some point.
Stuffed Kongs for everything, I swear.
Exactly. And so
Marshall heard Kong and just came up. He's like, what?
But getting them acclimated, right? It's like you think, well, it's no big deal. They're still right here within the heart of the home, but being behind a gate, it's like that's different. And so getting them used to that zone, and then a second safety zone that's more of a spa retreat. That's
Tell
outside.
me more.
Yeah, outside. So usually have zone 1 is within the heart of the home, and then zone 2 is usually in a second location where things are quiet. Things are not so stimulating visually. And so that might be an office or a den, where if we're seeing a lot of stress signals in our dog, and maybe we realize that they do need a break, that we can say, hey, let's go to safety zone number 2 and get you out of the mix. And I think once you become a parent and your significant other sees you strung out because you haven't slept more than 2 hours in days, they're going to say, why don't you go rest in bed?
Yeah.
Versus just kind of doze off on the couch. So thinking about zone 1 within the heart of the home and zone 2 in a second location.
Yeah, and it makes me think of like creating an area or creating a cue where the dog sees you sit in a certain chair. So if you have like a nursing chair or a rocking chair where you are planning on sitting with your baby, kind of teaching the dog, if I sit here, that means you go lay in your bed over there.
Beautiful.
Reinforcing that.
Yes.
Laura Monaco Torelli is a trainer, and she has videos of doing this. It's a little different for her in that she teaches her dog, when I pet the cat, you lay down in the bed, because her dog had the high prey drive. But it was just a physical cue that she didn't have to think about after practicing it and really generalizing it to where he wouldn't get overstimulated, being like, you're interacting with that thing and I want to check out the thing, right? I want to see the cat. No, I know that if you pet the cat, then I go lay down in the bed. So it's something that maybe could be used, the same idea with a baby of being like, no, it's super awesome if I go lay down here when you sit in this chair with or without a baby. Like,
right. That's the dream of it just kind of becoming automatic for the dog, right? The dog seeks refuge in those locations because it makes them feel good.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all about the good feelings.
Right. And so that getting those safety zones established and getting the dogs to like those zones, and then feeling as though, as an expectant parent, that, okay, they have these spots that are their own, they enjoy them, I can let some of my worry go.
Definitely. Well, a lot less stress that way, I think. Beyond the safety zones that you're going to get them used to being in, what else do you have expectant parents work on as they get closer to welcoming the new baby?
Canine body language, definitely.
Which is something all of us could benefit from learning more about, right?
Exactly. I mean, most children are bit in some form before the age of 12. And luckily, that bite most of the time didn't even cause a bruise, but it's enough for, raise of hands. It's like, who was bit here, as a child. And most of the time you'll get about 50% of the people raise their hand. And what happened, to your dog? Was your dog able to stay with you, or was your dog put into the backyard, or was your dog just still part of the family? And how did it make you feel growing up? Do you feel nervous around dogs, or are you okay with dogs? And so understanding canine body language is critical. I have to, I have a 50 slide presentation that my clients sit through to understand exactly how any dog that your baby is around, to be able to understand how the dog is feeling, right?
Within that's important going to other households too, right? Like,
right. I mean, when we think about the dogs that our children are exposed to, it's the family dog, it's grandma and grandpa's dog, it's the neighbor's dog, it's your best friend's dog. And so not just banking on, well, the dog was good before, but this is what I'm seeing today in this interaction. So, what are we looking at? We're looking at the mouth and the ears and the eyes and the tail and the overall body tension. And so does a dog feel happy? Does he feel relaxed? I feel like I'm talking to him. Or is my dog stressed, or is my dog too aroused, which we don't want either. And then, just looking at, what is a risky situation, right? Just simply put, in my book, anytime a dog and a child are face to face, it's risky. And that could even be a newborn. Just holding your newborn swaddled, just learning how to position yourself as a parent while holding your baby so your dog can be next to you on the couch. What are the safer ways? And so
it's almost like teaching people how to move their dog in a way with their body that's not stressful for the dog, and it's easy for them to do, rather than like having to use their hands or something, right? Because they're going to be holding a baby a lot of
You're going to be holding a baby. You might be holding a bottle. You might be fixing your clothing. I mean, it's just nice to kind of get into a pattern of, well, when my dog is next to me on the couch, the parent is in between the dog and the baby.
Right. Yeah. And just being aware of like where you need to be and what you need to be paying attention to. Do you try to have expecting parents with their dogs work on getting things on verbal cue so that they feel like they don't need to use a lure or a hand signal for things? Is that kind of a goal in training before the baby comes, or does that even really come into play?
Sometimes I would like to have a lure in place or a command, but it depends on how much time we have.
Right. So the earlier, the better.
Right.
Prepping early.
Right. Or just like incorporating what the dog already knows. It's like your dog already knows, go get your toy. Go get your toy. It's the way that you say it. And your dog already is like, oh, okay. And so, if you're holding your baby and your dog comes up to you and you realize, whoa, my baby and my dog are face to face, right at eye level, you can say, go get your toy. And your dog's like, okay. So like really kind of listening to the family on what the dog already knows and being able to incorporate that as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great idea. I do that all the time. I'm working on teaching my dog to get which toy, like
Oh yeah.
telling the difference, but it's whatever I say,
You're
she
so
describes whatever's
advanced.
closest. No.
Yeah.
Well, and that could be right. If you can get your dog to willingly and happily walk away versus it being like go away or pushing them or kneeing them, that's kind of inevitable, especially when you're sleep deprived as a parent. But if it's like 10% of the time versus like 100% of the time, then your dog's like, well, hey, I can be close to that baby for 1 to 2 seconds. And then my mom said, go get your toy. And then I did, and it was great. That baby's pretty cool.
Yeah, that association building is so important.
Right. And so, just learning canine body language, learning what is risky, right? Risky versus playing it safe. How do you position yourself between a dog and your baby?
Yeah. I mean, like, I have a bunch of friends that have kids and they're posting a lot of pictures and videos, and, it's kind of terrifying because it's like, I know that that's not they'll kind of be setting the baby and the dog up for a failure. And even though nothing happens, like, thank God a lot of the times nothing happens, but I don't know how much I have to be that friend that is like, you shouldn't be doing that with your dog. Like,
right.
And so I'm hoping that this podcast will do that for me.
I feel like I'm just going to email this to them.
Or it's like, what can you do instead? Right? Like you want to have your dog is part of your family, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like to have that family photo, like how safer can it be, right? You can play it risky where you have the baby propped up on the dog laying down to get just a picture of the dog and the baby. Or you could put a parent in the middle, right? So I got Aiden here. You guys ready for this? Aiden is my little realistic baby doll. But imagine, that you are taking a picture and you have your baby head secured, on one side, and then the parents in the middle, and then the dog on the other side.
Yeah.
Versus playing it risky where it's just the dog and the baby.
Yeah. Even just getting people to think about that, it's something that I could totally understand wouldn't even cross their mind until something awful did happen. Right. And then even then.
Well, they see everybody else doing it too.
Right. And why would it cross your mind that this is risky if you can't identify that it is? Right. I mean, it's not like when we're in elementary school, we're learning about communication in dogs. We sign our kid up, right, for Spanish or for French class as they get older. But why aren't our children learning canine body language? So when they become older and they have a family of their own, they can be acutely aware, well, oh, wow, my dog is actually simply tolerating this moment of the baby laying on the dog.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't do that again versus truly enjoying.
There's so many things that we should have been taught when we were little.
I've been at a park when kids are like, can I pet your dog? And I'm like, not today. Like, she doesn't feel like it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
She does tolerate. Like, I remember from when she was a puppy, the breeder lived across from a school and was talking about, oh, she has lots of socialization with kids. But then when I got her and as I watched her over, some time having her, she didn't super enjoy kids. She just tolerated it.
She was around them, but the breeder potentially thought it was a positive association when really it was just tolerance.
Exactly. So I was like, well, at least she's not fearful, right? And she's tolerant. But like then I just knew, well, if I don't have to put her in that situation, then I'm just going to manage it, right? And I'm just going to make sure she doesn't develop negative associations with kids rushing up and doing it. I remember I was picking up our 7-year-old from school, and a kid came up and was like, can I pet your dog? And I said, yes, if you do this. And he started to do the exact opposite. And his dad was amazing because he was behind me. He goes, no, you do what she told you to do, or you don't pet the dog. And I'm like, nice.
Right. But imagine what a different world it would be if from the moment that baby was born, right, learned through his parents, right,
Yeah.
over the years. So when he was 6 or 7 and he's at a park, he can already know the safer interactions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And be aware of the body language that Sookie was giving off, which was probably a little side eye.
Right, stiff, ears back. Right.
It's a lot of management, but you're right, Jennifer, like having that generational knowledge like passed down, it changes the culture and the way we interact with our pets all around. So, I mean, even just thinking back when I was a kid and you talk like, raise your hand if you were bit as a kid. Yeah. Right. I was a jerk to my little dog in the house. Like I would dress her up and I'd put my face right next to her face. And it wasn't nice for her. And the fact that she tolerated me as much as she did, and then if I did get a snap to my face, usually my mom back then was like, yeah, you were the one that made that happen, but luckily my parents thought that way and didn't immediately just get rid of the dog.
Right. But in turn, you also never learned safer behavior. So, my heart like just stops when I think about the potential of you running into a dog without that tolerance.
Right. Well, and that's where she was like, don't put your face in Penny. That was a dog's name. Don't put your face in Penny's face. Like just like you control the situation because you're the human. Like you don't have to overwhelm the dog. So I think back then the culture was a little bit more different. And now sometimes we get where if there's one incident, even if we set the dog up for it, that dog's gone. Right.
Sure.
So, yeah. So it's a lot of education that needs to happen out there.
Absolutely. And so if we start before the baby's born and we can educate those parents and set the bar, so to say, then as that baby grows older, they're practicing safer interactions.
I'm wondering, it's you had your was it Aiden? Is that something that like people do sometimes kind of carry around? I mean, I remember in like high school we had like our little egg or whatever we had to take care of, but obviously not an egg would be good for this particular situation.
Right. Yeah, this is a common question. Should I carry a baby doll around? And I feel that we're not going to fool our dog that it's actually a real baby, right? It doesn't make any sounds. It doesn't have an odor like a baby would. It doesn't move. But I think that if you wanted to prep your dog for you holding something, that it is something that is like the weight of a baby. I mean, this baby doll is not nearly the 9 pounds, 13 ounces that I had with my son or the 8.5 pound daughter. And so carrying a bag of flour around, it seems silly, but what you're trying to do is to get the dog used to you carrying your body differently.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I'd probably look at Aiden a little bit differently than a bag of flour.
That's a really good point. But, as far as like how you would move and potentially grab something off the floor or reach for something, I think if it's actual like the weight of a baby, your dog can get used to you carrying something that changes the way that your body looks and the way that you carry your body. The doll, a lot of times I bring in so people can hold a baby and I can show them firsthand what to do if the dog chooses to come up to the baby. Where should the dog sniff? And so a lot of times that's when Aiden comes into play. Because I want
that
them.
he has a name.
Yeah, Aiden. Aiding and abetting. But that's how the doll comes into play. It's like, okay, my newborn is here. Let's practice what to do if your dog decides to come up on their own. And so if the dog does decide to come up straight on, I just roll my baby into me, and the dog gets to sniff the bottom for 1 to 2 seconds, and then it's go find your toy.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, sure. and then having them meet face to face, which is risky.
Yeah.
So just getting a parent used to, that positioning can be very helpful.
And it almost just becomes habit, right? Just those body motions become habit. So
right.
Great. Do you also have expectant parents practice bringing out certain items and just acclimating the dog to baby items and cribs and things like that? Or do you have them practice any particular exercises with items like baby carriers and stuff?
I think that a big one would be if a dog is sensitive to sudden sounds.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask about sounds. Yeah.
Because that can definitely be a concern in the environment. And so if your dog is sensitive to sounds, the way that I try to teach dogs to be more okay with them is by figuring out what the dog loves, right? Maybe the dog loves his own kibble. Maybe he loves a scratch behind the ears, or maybe he loves his stuffy. And so what I do is I coin a little phrase that lets him know that one of these things that he loves is about to happen. And so imagining fast forward in time that if there's a shriek out of the baby, or the swing makes a sudden weird noise, or a bottle hits the floor, right? That's in the past when our dog used to be sensitive to something sudden, a sound. But if I can get my dog used to, oops, it's okay. Mm-hmm. And they think, oh, ear rub, or they think, oh, piece of kibble, something enjoyable. Then what I've done is in the future, when those moments do occur and my dog hears a sound, they're almost going to be looking at me preemptively, waiting for me to say, oops, it's okay, and be expecting something. And whether or not that thing is actually there for them, like the food or the ear rub, it doesn't always have to be the case, but it's the expectation that it is there. So going from worried and concerned or frightened because of the sound to feeling, oh, okay, something good's coming. And so, yes, there's always going to be something new in the environment, but I really want to see what the dog actually needs work on. Right? We do have some dogs that it's like they'll bark at a bag that blows through the yard.
Totally.
And they'll bark at a different grocery bag that comes into the house, or a cardboard box from Amazon. And if we have a dog that just barks at anything new like that, then we do need to work on getting that dog used to certain things that are going to be entered.
Yeah. And do you recommend any like sound playing apps or anything like that to help people?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
It's so common. It's like, well, play crying baby music. And when, if you think about it, it's like, haunted houses back when you were a kid, the ghost sound, ooh, ah, right? And you're like,
that's pretty good.
It's like, it sounds a little off. And then you never see the ghost. So one, it doesn't sound very real. And then you never find the baby. Right? So that's something to think about, whether or not you want to attempt this playing a crying baby music, right? But also, if you're not acutely aware of canine body language and the dog does believe the scary ghost is there in your house, like thinks that it is real, and you don't realize that the dog is freaking out with the ears back and the whale eye and the base of the tail low and hypervigilance, where's that ghost? Like, what are we doing there? Then we just potentially could be like traumatizing the dog to what sounds similar potentially to a real baby crying.
Right. And then they generalize that to the real baby without a lot of work.
Right. And so, when it comes to that dog and that baby being in the same environment, like if we can see that, oh, our dog doesn't seem to mind this crying at this moment, just like a new mom or dad, oh, he finally makes a sound, right?
Right.
His cry's so sweet and cute. And the dog's like, that thing finally made a sound, right? But then like fast forward in time, mom's just like, he won't stop crying. And you see my eyes go big, and you see me just kind of slump down and just freeze. And if we can see that our dog's eyes go big and they freeze and they're feeling the stress from the crying, like, what do we do in that moment? I've got a colicky baby. What do I do with my dog in that moment?
Right.
And a lot of times that's choosing a safety zone and then giving them something to do, like a brain game, like a normal diet food stuff Kong. So
Right.
from afar, they can be grinding on something, getting out that stress and that anxiety, but then also ingesting food, which is a positive association as well, to that baby that's crying. All along, you're trying to do like the 5 S's to get your baby to stop crying. Right. So, we can prepare for these moments where we should be like working with our dog. But in reality, a lot of times that happens passively. It's management. I'm too tired. My baby's been crying for 4 hours. I'm going to give my dog the break that my dog deserves, put him in a safety zone, give him a food stuff Kong, and maybe play them some music.
Right.
Or plug in the Adapto.
Yeah. And I think management is so important to focus on, because once someone learns how to set up the dog's environment the right way, and then how to manage it if they see their dog getting stressed, it takes a lot of pressure off of them in the moment. Like, they're busy with their newborn baby, and the last thing that they have time for is to work on cues and try to tell their dog what to do. And so even just having the management planned out for that environment, like, that's going to go so far for people. And
it's like, I've got this.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I'm sleep deprived. I mean, every 2 hours I was up. My, significant others in the same boat. And, they ran to the grocery store. I haven't showered in 2 days. Do you think I'm going to break out the treats and start training my dog? No, I'm going to be like, thank goodness I have that gate up.
Right.
I have a safety zone established. They're not completely isolated and in a back room with the door closed. They're just adjacent to the kitchen, behind the gate. They've got their bed. I'm going to go into the freezer and get that frozen food stuff Kong that we've been working on, right? Getting them adapted to eating out of the frozen Kong, and give that little bit of a sanctuary to my dog and just be like, we're all in this together, and we're doing my best. This is what I can do for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think keeping everyone's stress level as low as possible in a very,
because it's going to hit the fan. That's reality. But like, what are your tools?
Yeah.
Right. You don't want to be putting up a baby gate or isolating your dog in a back bedroom with the door closed and being like, sorry, this is it. Right. It'd be better if you had worked on this, so the dog can be like, oh yes, thank you for my spa retreat. I'll happily go there. And man, you're going to give me a Kong. I love that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Planning just finished his. Yeah.
Like, I'm done. What other tips or preparation would you suggest for people? Or is it really more about, create that management system and then really learn that body language so you know how to tell when your dog needs a break? What else do you have them prepare for when they're expecting?
The next thing would be like, well, what's our plan for coming home?
And do you have them kind of plan out, where's the dog going to be while you're having your baby?
I was going to ask that too, because I could see that just being like
home birth versus like hospital birth or
birthing
center.
It's like, you need to, like, if you're going to go to a hospital for birth, and hopefully it's short,
but you never know.
You never know, like having, someone available and ready to come check on your dog or come take your dog, out for, a run or whatever it might be, while like, cause they probably were like, wow, they rushed out of the house all crazy.
Yeah.
So just having that kind of plan in place, or even, I didn't even think about home births. Like, what do you do with the dog for that?
Safety zone.
Right? Like,
right. Because you're going to be hearing like these screams or these sounds or whatever that are not going to be very common.
A dog doula could be good. I bet a dog could be a great doula.
You never know. It might be more comforting for them. And so that's where it's like, if you knew body language, that's a really good point. If you knew body language, like, oh yeah, my dog actually feels better about what's happening just being close to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be an amazing comfort to the person having the baby. But then if you notice all of a sudden your dog is exhibiting big time stress signals, well, then and that's when it would come in handy for your dog to have a command, or just to seek refuge to that location on their own.
And then when people are bringing home their baby and meeting the dog for the first time, What is your advice for that? Do you have like a certain protocol you suggest, or?
Of course I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Coming home with baby, absolutely. You could be in the hospital for 24 hours. You could be there for 3 or 4 days with the cesarean, and you come home, and the last thing that you want to think about is like like the bad dream potential. All right, what could happen? Is my dog going to be good? Is my dog going to be too happy where he jumps on the baby? What do I do? What's the safest way to bring my child home? I'm just so tired. I'm so sore, right? I hurt, right? This baby just came out of me. And so I have a handout. Every topic that I go over in parent empowerment training, has a handout here.
I hope it's called "This Baby Just Came Out of Me." Now what?
I know. Oh man. And so it's like, okay, your dog has missed mom, right? Has missed both spouses. Not really eager to see the baby, right? Kind of understands that there's a baby growing inside of you, but isn't necessarily ready for the baby to be presented. And so what I normally do is I have the parent that birthed the baby stay in the car with the baby, okay, while the non-birth parent goes in and says hi to the dog. Okay, so non-birth parent goes and walks into the house, says hi to the dog, lets the dog outside to relieve itself, brings the dog back in, the dog goes behind a baby gate.
Right.
Okay, and that could be safety zone number 1 or safety zone number 2. Okay, so now your dog has greeted one of his pet parents and has eliminated, right? And has greeted that one person. And so then that one person comes back out to the car, stays with the newborn baby. And now the baby that birthed, or the person that birthed the baby goes in. And guess what? You don't have to worry about getting jumped on. Whether you had a cesarean or you're just really, really tired, right? Your dog is behind a gate. You can pet through the gate, have some time, and then you can walk over to the freezer and grab a frozen foodstuff Kong that your dog is used to. Walk over to the gate. Hopefully by then your dog just decides to sit on their own in order to get the things that they want, that impulse control. Your dog just decides to sit because that's the fastest way to get the Kong. You go ahead and you give the Kong. So now you know that you have spent some time with your dog, and your dog now has something to chew on and to eat while you take the time to go back out to the car, and then the 3 of you enter as your new family. And so when you enter, you're both parents and then your baby, you don't have a dog that's just bum rushing you, right? The gate's in place. Any smells, any sights, any sounds are all now getting paired with something positive, that dog chewing on the Kong. And then just the excitement in general is kind of over, right? Because I wanted to see my dog. Like I missed her. I was like in the hospital for days. And I felt like I could give her that time of saying, Polly, I just love you so much. I missed you. It's been days since I've seen you. Like we already had that moment together, her and I, and then my spouse and I. And so now when we enter together with our child, we've had that connection, and kind of the excitement has now mellowed out of it.
Yeah. And then do you even recommend that people try to be like through the gate, here's the baby, like so that they can get some of that scent and just check it out? Or you just kind of like let it, just let it relax for a little bit. Don't worry about forcing any kind of introduction.
Yeah, my thought on it is that the dog chooses when to meet the baby.
Yeah.
So I'm not ever bringing baby to dog. Dog
Right.
needs to willingly want to come up to baby.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great way of asking our dogs for consent for interaction. So
right.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is really great information. I love the idea of ahead of time kind of when picking a spot, like maybe your nursing chair, something like that, to get the dog used to you being there while they're over there ahead of time. I think that's like a really just a great tip for and that could, I'm just thinking of all the different uses that could really like come into, even if you had like an elderly person in your family that, doesn't want an animal jumping up on them.
Sure.
If they take that spot and then they know the dog knows to leave that person alone and go into, but I was just wondering, sorry, that was a little bit of an aside, but back to bringing the baby home. In my mind, I don't know if they still send babies home with those cute little hats.
Yes, they do. As far as I know, at least however many years ago.
But I guess in my mind, I would have thought that maybe bringing that to the dog ahead of time for some smells would be good. But now I'm wondering if that's more of like that ghost noise that you were talking about before, where it wouldn't really put the two together.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wish I knew everything, right? Gosh, to have a crystal ball into a dog's mind. I feel like this kind of goes back to Pavlov, as mentioned in the first podcast. It's like, well, here's this smell. Now we need something good with it within 1 to 2 seconds.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to have this baby smell and then, I don't know, the neighbor shooting off a firework.
Or nothing.
Right? So it's like, well, here's the smell.
But so it's going in with the plan.
But what is it attached to, right? We need something to attach to it that the dog finds enjoyable.
Yeah.
So I think doing something like that.
So if you had that plan in place ahead of time.
It could potentially help, right?
Right.
But I don't know also how much that actually will happen.
Right. And there's not a lot of time to...
We only have a day or two, and whether it's, the parents are back and forth at the hospital, or, maybe there's a family member that's preparing the home and cooking a few meals and is there waiting when the new parents come in. I don't know if we can even ask that of them, right? Because things are just moving really fast and we just got a lot going on. So I think oh, kisses.
Mabel just woke up.
If it were a possibility, but that we just attach that smell of the baby's cap, right? So said baby's cap, and then it's, oh, here's your ear rub. And I'll massage your ear, and then I take it away. And then here's the baby's cap, and then the ear rub, because the dog loves his ears rubbed.
Yeah. And part of me wonders too, if like getting to smell something like, because when there's a new smell, they're like, what is it? Right. And they just want to check it out. I wonder, and it might depend on the dog, if being able to have that kind of like, what is this new smell, and that kind of intense sniffing it out first means they're less, like they're just calmer when they smell that thing again.
Potentially.
In color,
Yeah, I think that's a really good like thought process. Potentially.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I wish I could be in that dog's brain to know, like,
what
and I mean, is it?
Even with all this prep, it's like, well, okay, then, grandma decided to walk the dog 4 hours before you guys bring baby home to get the dog tired. But grandma didn't know that he was, the dog's like reactive to the dog down the street. And then, so that's like first trigger, trigger stacking. Yeah. And then, there's something that scares the dog that is a second trigger. And then you don't know this, you're in the hospital, like checking out with your baby, and your dog's basically like a wreck full of cortisol because grandma decided to walk the dog and your dog is now stressed. So you can go ahead and you can prep for, the baby's little bonnet or hat to be a positive association for your dog, and try to get your dog used to a smell before your baby comes home. But I want you to be able to like live in the moment when you actually are there and you can see your dog and notice how your dog is actually feeling.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're going to be too tired and too sore and just don't want to like deal with your loved dog that you've had for however many years in those first days, if not weeks.
Right.
Right. I mean, this is just reality, and it's okay. It's just, let's do our best on setting the environment up and the family to succeed.
That's great. It's great advice. I love the idea though of having that management set up where they're just relaxing and then you're waiting for them to show interest in meeting. I think that takes a lot of pressure off of the people too, especially the parents of like, okay, we have to do this right. And then it feels forced.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you see those videos, where there's a gentleman holding this newborn, bringing it to the dog, and the dog flips on his back and his tail's tucked and he's licking and his ears are back. And I'm like, oh, how this could have been different. Or even you do try that, but then you realize, oh, that's right, in body language. My dog's not enjoying this. And then you step back from that.
Yeah. Some great advice.
Thank you.
Yes. So the message is being like drilled home here. Body language.
Absolutely.
We all got to get on board with this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not hard. It just takes practice.
Right. It isn't hard. Little kids definitely can start learning.
And they learn sometimes faster than adults, I've noticed.
Yeah. And whether that's because we've been practicing thinking that a wagging tail means happy, right? It's like, well, okay, I'm 43 years old and all of my adult life, I have been thinking a wagging tail means happy.
Right.
This was my experience exactly. As a 41-year-old, I always thought that, but this one right here, Mabel, is the one that taught me that sometimes a wagging tail means I'm about to lose it and try to attack.
Right. Oh, and what a different world it could have been for you if you would have known younger. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thankfully nothing has, and it really is only in like regards to dogs that she sees outside and this is her pre-barking pooping thing, tail wagging.
And knowing that information, that's where I really like getting to know families, because you're telling me that you said she barks out the windows at the front before when she in her younger days.
Oh no! So we actually we adopted her last year in August, and she's 10. She was 10 something when we adopted her. So I don't know what she was like before, but like, for example, she's actually showing me some signs right now that she's upset that her brother is walking beneath me.
Okay. What are you supposed to do, Mia?
Well, I'm currently hosting a podcast, so I'm not exactly sure.
But you can move Mabel to somewhere where she doesn't feel threatened, so her little perch again and away from you, so that you don't get stuck in between, because Marshall just wants to be near you.
Yeah, I don't even think he cares so much right now. I think she just crawled over and that's another podcast.
Yeah.
But I have to say that there has been a time when, little kids have come up and asked if they could pet Mabel, and I say no because I don't know her like track record with kids. Right.
Mm-hmm. But that's
I'd rather not test it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and at her age, why would you have to? It's like, you know what? We're just not going to put her through that.
Right.
And a great short way to dodge that bullet, so to say. These are kind of the little practical tips that I give to my families. Instead of having to go through, oh, well, she's old and she doesn't feel good and I don't know her history with kids. You just see a kid approaching and you just say, sorry, she's got diarrhea. I mean, seriously, because it's short, it's effective.
I'm going to use that whenever I don't want to talk to somebody. Sorry, got diarrhea. Nope.
But I mean, like realistically, like no adult or no child's going to want to still pet a dog that has diarrhea. And so like just giving somebody, a parent, a little like go-to term, sorry, my dog has diarrhea. Because you're going to be like having your baby in an ergo baby and you're going for a walk and you have your dog on a leash and somebody wants to like come up and pet your dog. Before you can even like go through your spiel, well, let's ask the dog or yada, yada, yada. It's like, sorry, my dog has diarrhea. I just found out, And then you can just be on your way.
We just found out.
like down the street.
Got to develop a
What do you
backstory.
think about? I mean, it's hysterical, but it's effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
So hopefully that's not happening right now.
Mabel's like, I can have diarrhea.
I don't know if you can hear her.
Oh, I hear some pug snorts. I do. I love her snorts.
Oh boy. I might have to actually take them outside soon. And hopefully she'll be less angry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any other tips or pointers that you have, though, for parents who are expecting and then are worried, or maybe not worried about how their dog's going to do? Is there anything that you do tell parents who are like, oh, my dog will be fine?
I had a really good dog too. And I can understand why people think that way. And I just try to tell people, you want to be in the situation where you've prepared as fully as you can. Because if there is a growl that happens, how is that going to sit with you? What do you have a plan in place if that were to happen? Are you just going to chalk it up to, oh, okay, that was one growl, we'll move forward? Or is this something that we're thinking about rehoming the dog? So I think that even with your quote unquote really good dog, you owe it to your dog and you owe it to your family to try to prepare fully. You're going to have a lot of people that are asking, how can I help? And it's like, well, what about, we have these meal trains that take place for expectant parents, right? Everybody signs up to bring dinner one night. But what if they actually walk the dog in the pathway that you're recommending, right? So you're kind of mapping out where to take the dog on a walk to avoid the triggers that are in your neighborhood. You already have that Kong toy handout on how to stuff a Kong, and it's put right on a magnet in the front of your fridge, and you've got a bunch of empty Kongs that you've already gone through. And it's like, well, okay, you've come over, you've dropped off spaghetti, you've walked the dog. Do you mind stuffing some Kongs? Putting Kongs and baby gates on the registry, the baby registry, people will get I think they'll really get a hoot out of like, well, I'm going to buy for the baby, right? So I'm going to get this cute little onesie and this cute little blanket. But oh my goodness, they have the dog Kongs on the registry. That's so cute. I'm going to buy a few of those too. Because you're going to need a lot. You're going to need at least a half a dozen.
Yeah.
So you can just, stuff them all on a Sunday and have, 4 or 5 days worth.
Yeah.
You might use 1 to 2 a day. Those would be my thoughts right for now.
Definitely. I love the Kong registry. I'll put it on my wish list too.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those products that can be given to your dog, and as long as it's sized right and the durability is correct for the type of chewer that you have, it's relatively safe to leave unsupervised. That's the thing. And so we're just making sure that our dogs are not going to end up with a foreign body, or we're not just indefinitely buying new toys, repeatedly, or most kids' toys don't look like a Kong as well.
Right.
Yes.
And they're easy to clean, right? That's the thing. It's like they're user friendly for the parent as well, right? You stuff them with the normal kibble and then you blast them with the faucet, top rack dishwasher safe, good to go the next day. Versus like a lot of these other products where it's just really tedious to clean or they get shredded apart.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for your knowledge and for helping us keep babies and their families and their dogs safe and happy and connected. And again, just hammering it home, body language.
Safety zones, Kongs.
Yes.
Whether or not you have a dog that's nervous around sounds and noises and new objects. Yes.
Yeah. And we'll link to some of your resources as well. And of course, to your website, pawsitivetransformation.com. And that's positive with a PAWSITIVE and transformation. So we'll link to all of that and anything that you've got coming up. And can't wait to talk to you again soon.
I can't wait to try it again.
All right. Thanks everybody. Take care. Thanks for listening. If you've got a question for Kathy that you'd like answered on one of our podcasts, send her an email at training@preventivevet.com. If you'd like to hear about our upcoming Yappy Hours, head to our website, preventivevet.com, to sign up for alerts or get notified when you sign up for the Pause and Play newsletter. If you're enjoying the podcast, we'd really appreciate your rating and review so that other pet lovers can find us. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back with another Pause and Play podcast soon.